Hello, everybody. RMJ Movie Reviews back. I'm going to be reviewing the Amazing Spider-Man 2 later on this week after the check goes into the bank. But in the meantime, I'm going to be talking about... I heard news that they're going to be making a Friday the 13th television series. A Reboot, another one, whatever you want to call it. Those of us who are old enough to remember... in the late 80s, they had already they came up with a Freddy Krueger TV show, and they had a Friday the 13th TV show. If memory serves me right, because I used to watch both of them on my black and white television in my room. If I remember, I think the Friday the 13th series came first, if I remember right. And we all know that didn't even have anything to do with Jason. You know, it was around like antiques and haunted items, and it was actually a pretty cool horror show. It was just the fact that, you know, the people who produced the original film series in the 80s cheated the audience and using it, because if memory serves me right, I don't recall any episode, not even one episode, having to deal with Jason. Or even a hockey mask, which I think there's something in the opening credits that looks like a hockey mask, but I don't know if people, horror guys who might happen to see this video, tell me if I'm wrong. But it was a cool series. The Freddy Krueger TV show, I believe that was a year later. I think Freddy's Nightmares was 88 or 89. I can't remember. I know it was around the time either Nightmare 4 or Nightmare 5 came out. But I remember, watching Freddy's Nightmares on my black and white television when I was in elementary school. And I remember thinking that it was a pretty cool show. I rewatched it again on Chiller Network about a couple years ago. And, I was kind of torn. Like, is this nostalgia that's making me think this isn't so bad? Or is it really bad? All I can say is there are a couple of episodes that are really, really, really bad. But it's just kind of fun to revel in the whole Freddy craze of the late 80s at that time. And then there's some that were okay. There was one Freddy episode I remember seeing where there were like twins and they were fighting Freddy, and like Freddy's arm like stretched out towards the kid. It was actually a fairly creepy episode. I remember I was watching that at my old house, and either way, the episode ends and Freddy kills one of the twins, and one of the twins wakes up and goes, "Oh, Cindy, we made it out alive." And she looked over at the bed, and like her sister was covered in blood, and I remember being thoroughly creeped out by that. And at that time, the last time I had been creeped out by Freddy was when I saw A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and 1, when my older brothers and sisters were watching that when I was like 5. That was when Freddy was terrifying. By the time Dream Warriors and the other ones came around, he was a comic book character. But back to Friday the 13th. I just was going on YouTube, and I saw on a horror movie YouTube channel that Daniel Farron's, the very passionate, insightful horror screenwriter who wrote The Abomination. Let me rephrase that. The studio controlled and released abomination known as Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers, or Halloween 666: The Origin of Michael Myers, whatever you want to call it. I saw that film opening night, September. I can't remember. It was late September of 1995. I was 14 years old. I was an eighth grader at Monticello Middle School. I saw it opening night at Severance Town Center here in Cleveland. It's not there anymore. Full House. That was the only movie I ever saw where when the movie ended, people booed. So when Donald Pleasant's name came up at the end and it said four Donald Pleasants, everybody in the theater booed. I listened to the pirate commentary for Halloween 6: The Curse of Michael Myers. Daniel Farron's, pretty much his passion was there. He wrote a very good script. As anything, Hollywood is is a business. So unfortunately, he got screwed. What can you do? That's what happened. They basically took his script as a blueprint, and after that, there were too many cooks stirring the pot, and they just said, the hell with the script. We don't need it, and let's just do whatever we want to do. And the movie tested poorly, and then they just reshot a whole bunch of stuff that didn't make any sense. And thus, you have the movie that I saw on Friday night when I was 14, and everybody booed at the end. But regardless, Daniel Farron is supposed to be one of the people who's actually, I don't know whether he's producing or writing, but he's one of the creative people behind this new Friday the 13th television series. I don't really know. I got mixed feelings about it. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of stuff now. It's 2014, and they're really the Hollywood machine. Although you have people like Daniel Farron, who's really passionate about this kind of thing, but they're really because movies are so expensive now. People don't want to spend the movies. You got Redbox, you got streaming, you got all this crazy stuff. People aren't going out to the movies, and I guess the brilliant people in Hollywood, instead of creating something new, they're simply going to the 70s and the 80s. Really, right now, we're in a period of where they're just raping the 1980s. That's what they're doing right now. I said that in my Point Break review, but that's what they're doing. They're taking. I mean, I saw something where they were talking about they're making Jim and the holograms into a movie. Jim was a doll that was like a rock and roll version of Barbie, and I remember one of my friends, Lori, who lived around the corner from me, had the doll, and she had rosy cheeks and painted eyes, and you hit the button on her back and her earrings lit up, and then she had a cartoon that was Jim and the holograms. I mean, has Hollywood really gotten so uncreative that they have to make Jim and the holograms into a film, and then they're remaking a Flash Gordon? I mean, it's nuts right now. I'd really be interested to see a Friday the 13th series, seeing that we have Hannibal and we have Bates Motel, as one of the YouTube horror YouTubers had said in his video. And by the way, I want to say I hate Bates Motel. I do not like Bates Motel at all. I hate the Bates Motel. I do not like that show at all. I can appreciate the fact that they want to be gritty and grimy and raw and trying to be like all these other TV shows that exploit rape and violence and incest and all that, whatever. But I just don't like it. I think the guy who plays Norman Bates in the show is perfectly cast, but I hate that show. I don't like it. I love the actress who plays the mom from The Departed. She's great. But I just don't like the show. I hate it. I don't find it enjoyable. Hannibal, I think, is a pretty good show. I've kind of been able to catch it here and there. I haven't been able to keep up with it. But I actually like Hannibal. I think that's a pretty cool show. But if they do a Friday the 13th series, I'm not really quite sure, because they're talking about they're going to do the origins of the Voorhees family, and I don't know. I mean, it's just that it's 2014, and all these things that we love from the 80s and the early 90s, those are things of their time, you know what I mean? So I'm a gigantic fan of horror films, good horror films and bad ones, which there were a lot of bad ones that came out in the 80s and the early 90s. But I love those ones. I love the original Friday the 13th films that were released in the 80s. Which would be the original through Jason Takes Manhattan. I like all those movies, you know what I mean? Some better than others, but I like them all. They're part of just that era, and I don't really realistically see them taking something from an era of entertainment that was highly unrealistic. Now everything is kind of hyper-realism, CSI, this and this and that, and everything is very, very, really concrete in reality. And I just don't know. I don't know. I'd be excited to see what they do with it because I know Daniel Farrens is involved with it, and Daniel Farrens is very passionate about the genre. And I heard him say he really likes Halloween and he really likes the original Friday the 13th from back in the day. So, and he produced the Crystal Lake Memories, the Blu-ray, which I have not seen because I only have DVD, and they released it on Blu-ray, whatever. I'm curious to see what they do with it, but I'm not really quite sure because it's from an era where everybody who grew up on those movies are 40s and 30s. You know, there's some people who are in their 40s who still kind of like them, and then there's some people in their 30s who still kind of like them, like myself. But you know, a lot of the people who grew up on those movies who liked them back then have grown past it. So there's really only left people like myself who are really just hardcore about it and are faithful to it and stick with it. So I'm curious to see because Daniel Farrens is involved. That's it's going to be a Jason-based Friday the 13th series, unlike the original one that just used the name to get ratings. I'm curious to see what they do with it, but if it really goes in the direction of something like Bates Motel, you can count me out because Bates Motel is really nothing more than taking beloved characters of a suspenseful horror classic and turning it into a Twin Peaks wannabe. And Twin Peaks is great because it's so bizarre, but I don't. You know, if they do that with Friday the 13th, where like Jason like had sex with his mom or something like that, then count me out. I'm not interested. You know, I think if you get the right passionate people who love the original films from the 80s and who